Hello, I'm Susan, a 32-year-old woman. Growing up, I was fortunate to be raised in a family where my dad's success as a businessman meant we lived comfortably. While I enjoyed the finer things in life, I never let that privilege define me. I understood that wealth didn't make me better than anyone else, it was just a circumstance of birth. However, as I grew older, I realized that many people saw me differently. Once they learned about my background, assumptions were made. I was often labeled as a spoiled, entitled rich kid. It hurt, especially because it made building genuine relationships so much harder. Instead of making real connections, I often found myself surrounded by envy, leaving me feeling isolated. That was when Michael entered my life. Our meeting was nothing short of a whirlwind romance, and 4 months later, we were married. It might have seemed impulsive, but for the first time, I felt truly loved, and I held on to that feeling with everything I had. Michael became my anchor, my stability in a world that often felt uncertain. Yet, despite our love, there were challenges. Michael's parents, John and Elizabeth, were never truly supportive of our relationship. From the start, they viewed me through the lens of my wealth and feared that I might bring complications into Michael's life. They worried that I would be manipulative or spoil him with excess, and it stung. I wish they could see who I really was, not just the girl with a privileged background. I tried hard to prove that I wasn't the person they thought I was. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Months after Michael and I got married, Elizabeth called me. Her unusually cheerful tone made me tense, something about it felt off. After some casual conversation, she surprised me with an announcement. She and John were planning a long-awaited dream vacation and were excited about the trip. In an effort to get closer to Elizabeth, I impulsively offered to cover all the costs. "Would you really do that?" she asked, taken aback. "Of course," I said, eager to show her that I cared. "You're family now, and I want you to enjoy this trip without any worries." Though she hesitated at first, she eventually accepted, and I could see the joy in her eyes. We were all thrilled about the upcoming adventure. In my excitement, I even arranged for first-class tickets for the whole group to ensure a comfortable experience for everyone. When we arrived in Turkey, the country's vibrant colors and culture immediately captivated us. For John, Elizabeth, and Michael, it was their first international trip, and the experience was eye-opening for them. Even though I had been to Turkey before, sharing it with them made me see it through fresh eyes. As the most experienced traveler, I eagerly took on the role of tour guide. I was excited to show them the best sights and introduce them to Turkish cuisine. Everything was perfect, or so it seemed. Then, we arrived at the luxurious Stardust Hotel that Elizabeth had chosen for our stay. As I unpacked in our lavish room, John unexpectedly told me that I wouldn't be staying with them. Instead, they had made separate arrangements for me. At first, I thought it was a joke, but as Elizabeth smirked and explained that the 5-star hotel was for them, while I was to stay in a motel, I was stunned, confused and hurt. I turned to Michael for support, but he said nothing, which only deepened my frustration. I demanded an explanation. Elizabeth and John didn't hold back. They accused me of being arrogant and said they wanted to teach me humility. They criticized me for offering to pay for the trip and for booking first-class tickets, misinterpreting my intentions as an attempt to flaunt my wealth. Their words cut deep. I had only wanted to share a beautiful experience with them, not to show off my financial status, but they twisted my kindness into something malicious, accusing me of being obsessed with money and looking down on others. Worse, they even suggested that if my family ever lost everything, I would have nothing of value to offer. It was a harsh wake-up call, and for the first time, I felt the weight of their judgment more than the joy of our trip. I was furious, trying to defend myself, saying, "I've always appreciated what I have and never thought I was better than anyone. I just wanted to give my family a special experience, and I don't see anything wrong with that." John and Elizabeth's smug expressions were all too telling, revealing just how much disdain they had for me. It was clear they were willing to go to any lengths to belittle me, unconcerned with the pain their actions were causing. I turned to Michael, desperately hoping for some support, some sign that he was on my side amid the chaos. But all I saw on his face was regret. I felt the distance between us growing, and with a bitter snarl, I said, "You're all fools, and I must be one too, trusting any of you in the first place." My anger, now an uncontrollable force, surged through me as I grabbed my things and stormed out of the room, leaving the scene like a tempest. The cruelty of it all was beyond me. As I made my way to the lobby, my phone buzzed with a message from Elizabeth, the address of the miserable motel they had booked for me. That was the final straw. I blocked their numbers, cutting off any remaining connection to their toxicity. Standing in the empty lobby, I felt more alone than ever, especially when I was told the hotel was fully booked. My heart sank even lower. I broke down, tears streaming down my face as I sat in the lobby, completely abandoned. In my most vulnerable moment, I reached out to my dad, needing his comforting words to calm my shattered spirit. I poured out the entire story to him, the betrayal, the humiliation, everything. "Oh sweetheart, I'm so sorry you're going through this," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But remember, with our kind of wealth, there will always be people who try to take advantage. It's a hard truth, but it doesn't change who you are." I told him about Michael, how betrayed I felt, and how foolish I was for believing things could be different with him. My dad's voice was steady, reminding me of my own strength. You're tougher than you think, you'll get through this, just like you've gotten through everything else. You're not alone. Then he asked, "Where are you now?" "I'm at the Stardust Hotel, but they say they don't have a room for me," I answered, my defeat clear in my voice. His tone lightened, a teasing hint in his words that somehow made me feel stronger. It was a reminder that, no matter how bad things seemed, I still had a safety net. "Why would I upset everyone else here? They came to have a good time, not to get caught in your drama," he joked. "But this hotel? It's the one I paid for, and they had the nerve to kick you out like this." I was still reeling from the entire ordeal when I vented to my dad. "I can't believe this is happening, Dad," I said, frustration evident in my voice. "Wait, did you say the Stardust?" he interrupted, his tone shifting to one of curiosity. "Hang on, sweetheart, let me check something." I could hear him moving around. Then a few moments later, he came back practically bubbling with excitement. "We'll make them pack up. They're in my hotel." "Your hotel? What do you mean?" I was completely confused. The story that followed sounded unbelievable. Despite my usual advice against gambling, my dad had once made a rare exception, and in a turn of events that could only be described as pure chance, he ended up winning a hotel in a bet. The hotel? The Stardust, the very place I had just been kicked out of. It was like something out of a movie, a stroke of incredible luck, or fate, or both. My dad, who never loses at anything, had unwittingly become the owner of the hotel where I was now being humiliated. "I can't believe this," I said, laughing in disbelief. "This is crazy." Dad's voice grew more determined. "Now go take back what's yours. They have no idea who they're messing with." "Thanks, Dad," I said, a surge of gratitude and newfound strength flowing through me. I don't even know what to say. This twist of fate felt like a lifeline. With my dad's unexpected support, I knew I could handle whatever came next. I hung up the phone, now ready to face whatever I had to in Turkey. Empowered by my father's backing, I made my way back to the hotel, a sense of resolve building within me. I knocked on the door of the room where Elizabeth, Michael, and John were staying, prepared to turn the tables. Michael opened the door, clearly shocked to see me standing there. Before he could say a word, I stepped forward with steely determination. "I'm coming in, whether you like it or not." As I entered the room, Elizabeth's shrill voice immediately filled the air. "What do you think you're doing here? We already showed you the door," she mocked. "Look at her, thinking she owns the place." I couldn't resist responding, my voice steady and confident. "Well, in a way, I kind of do." Elizabeth sneered, accusing me of being so entitled that I thought luxury was my birthright. "If you don't leave, I'll call security," she threatened, clearly relishing the idea of me being escorted out. What she didn't know was that security was already on my side. At my signal, they stepped forward, starting to move John and Elizabeth's things out of the room. John looked utterly confused, his jaw slack in disbelief. "What the hell is going on here?" he stammered. I seized the moment to deliver the knockout blow. "Actually, my dad owns this hotel, and it's time for you to leave. Your little scheme to humiliate me has just backfired." Elizabeth and John were in shock, unable to process the reality of the situation. "You'll regret this," John grumbled, still in denial, but I stood my ground, unshaken. "I paid for these rooms. I'm as much of a paying guest as anyone here." Their protests were meaningless as the weight of their actions settled on them. "Where are we going to stay?" Elizabeth fretted, suddenly realizing how badly they had miscalculated. Without a hint of sympathy, I replied, "Maybe the motel you booked for me could accommodate you, though I'm not sure how it'll fit all of you." "Heartless," John snapped, trying to paint me as the villain in the situation. "No," I shot back, "you're the villains here. You treated me like dirt, and I'm not just going to take it." Michael's apologies came too late to have any effect on me. I informed him calmly, "This marriage is over. I can't stay with someone who's betrayed me like this." As security escorted them out, Elizabeth sobbed, and John grumbled bitterly, but I remained unmoved. The reality of their actions had finally hit them. Before they left, John hurled one last insult, calling me a spoiled brat. His words only fueled my anger, but more than that, they reaffirmed my decision. This wasn't about me being entitled, it was about standing up for myself when no one else would. I turned to face them one last time, my voice icy. "You can all just disappear." Watching them leave, faces a mixture of shock and shame, felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Hours later, I could see them from my hotel window, wandering aimlessly, trying to find a place to stay. They tried calling me, but I had blocked their numbers. Instead, they sent desperate emails, full of pleas and apologies. Too little, too late. I scrolled through the flood of messages, but my finger hovered over the reply button without any real desire to respond. Instead, I dialed my dad to fill him in on the latest turn of events. Looking out over the city, I couldn't help but notice the pitiful state of Elizabeth, Michael, and John. They seemed completely lost, wandering aimlessly, clearly struggling to find a place to stay. "They look completely hopeless," I said, the sight giving me a strange sense of satisfaction. My dad's voice was laced with a subtle amusement. Well, I may have made a few calls, he admitted. Let's just say they're not having the easiest time finding a place to stay in the city anymore. I winced, a twinge of guilt pulling at me. Was this too much? Yes, they had been cruel, but seeing them suffer this way felt almost excessive. Isn't this taking it a bit far? I asked, hesitation in my voice. They were terrible to me, but this feels like we're going too far. Dad was unfazed, his tone softened, but his conviction remained. They needed to learn the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, people need a wake-up call. I appreciated his desire to protect me, but I couldn't ignore the niggling doubt. I just hope they don't carry this with them forever, I murmured, my thoughts lingering on the possibility that this experience might change them for the better. I want them to grow from this, not to become bitter. My dad's voice was calm, yet reassuring. Hopefully, this ordeal will be a turning point for them, but more importantly, you've come out stronger. Don't let them define your happiness. I took comfort in his words, grateful for his steady support. You're the best, Dad, I said, my heart swelling with appreciation. The irony didn't escape me when I learned that Elizabeth, Michael, and John ended up at the very motel they had booked for me. Their plans had spectacularly backfired, trapping them in the same discomfort they had hoped to impose on me. There I was, alone in the lavish hotel suite that was meant to be shared, the spaciousness both a gift and a reminder of how far things had fallen. The solitude was bittersweet. On one hand, I reveled in the freedom, the ability to be on my own terms without the weight of judgment or manipulation, but in those quiet moments, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly things had unraveled, leaving me to navigate this journey alone. Yet, as I settled into my solitude, a sense of clarity washed over me. I realized that this newfound peace was worth far more than the company of deceitful people. The isolation, though uncomfortable at times, felt like a gift, a moment for me to reconnect with my own sense of self-worth. I didn't need validation from others to know that I deserved better. Empowered by that realization, I sent Michael the divorce papers. His attempts at reconciliation, his hollow promises of change, were met with silence. I had seen his true nature, and no amount of apologies could undo the damage. I knew I deserved someone who loved me genuinely, not someone who tried to manipulate me into forgiving them. The rest of my time in Turkey, though spent alone, became a transformative period of self-discovery. When I returned home, I wasted no time removing every trace of Michael from my life, cutting off contact with him and his family without a second thought. The experience had taught me the invaluable lesson that happiness comes from within, not from others' opinions or actions. I embraced my independence with a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into personal growth, pursued my passions, and surrounded myself with people who lifted me up. With each passing day, my confidence and self-assurance grew. The wounds of the past began to heal, replaced by a sense of pride and self-love I had never fully realized before. I learned that true happiness lies in being authentic and loving oneself, not in seeking validation from those unworthy of my time. Turkey, in all its chaos, had been the catalyst for this revelation. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was free to define my happiness on my own terms. With a heart full of determination and a smile on my face, I walked forward, leaving the past behind and embracing a future filled with self-acceptance and joy.